and the cancer connection. And most of this information comes from the book The China Study by T. Colin Campbell and Thomas Campbell. And so let's get right into it. Genesis 1:29 says, "And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat." So man's original diet is this, okay? And this includes everything that grows, that bears a seed, or is a fruit of a tree yielding seed, okay? Of course, vegetables came in a little bit later, okay? But we can almost include it here in the herb yielding bearing seed, yeah? But this is the original diet provided by us, by God. So the story of protein is part science, part culture, and a big portion of mythology, right?
Yes.
And so we want to look into this today because protein has gotten a bad rep, but it's also misunderstood. And so people have the wrong concept of protein. Protein was discovered by Gerhard Mulder in 1839. It was there already, right? He just discovered it. He discovered it, and so they started to study it. And so they named it protein, which comes from the Greek proteos, and it means it means of prime importance. It's very important. So they recognize whatever this thing is, this substance, these amino acids, this is used by the body to make hair, skin, chemical processes, hormones, everything needs proteins, okay? And so it is of prime importance. And in the 19th century, protein was synonymous with meat. You ask people, do you want protein? They think meat. That's just the way the world is. The whole world uses the same type of terminology and mindset when it comes to protein. Now, this gentleman here, Carl Voigt, who's a German scientist, he found out that a man, an adult male, only needs around 48.5 grams of protein per day. Let's round it off to 50. But he still recommended 118 grams because of the cultural bias of his time. Okay? So they say, okay, we need this much, but because people eat this much, we'll just recommend so much because that's what people are naturally doing. Okay? Now, Voigt was the mentor of researchers such as Max Rubner and Wilbur Olin Atwater. And Rubner stated that a large protein allowance is the right of the civilized man. And this mentality just crossed the globe. And everyone kind of thinks that way, right? My grandfather, he grew up poor. And when he was older, he ate meat. If he could have it 3 times a day, he ate it, right? And my grandmother, she's still alive. She's 86. She would always encourage him to eat, more fruits and more veggies and so forth. I remember in 95, 96, when we were in Michigan, Andrews University, my dad was there studying, and my grandfather and my grandma, they visited us. And my mom presented him for breakfast with some fruit and oatmeal. And he's like, I'm sorry, I don't eat bird food. And he went out and bought some meat. Right? That was just the bird food. That's bird food, yeah. A large protein allowance is the right of the civilized man. That's what the world believes, and that's how the world acts. How much do we need? 50 grams.
15?
50.
50.
50 grams, that's what we need. Okay? Now, Atwater organized the first nutrition laboratory at the USDA. And he recommended 125 grams of protein a day. Okay? So protein, fat, carbs, and alcohol, which we find sometimes in nature in small quantities, or if people consume it, it provides calories. Okay? Fat, carbs, proteins are macronutrients, vitamins and minerals are micronutrients. There are hundreds of thousands of different kinds of proteins, okay? So we have about 22 amino acids, but you can combine them in an almost infinite form and combinations to make up the different tissues and molecules and enzymes that our body needs, okay? And protein wears out and we have to replace them. That's why we need to eat protein to provide the body with the ingredients to repair and build and repair our tissues. The best protein is the human body. Yeah. Yeah. It's the best protein. You know why? Because my amino acid makeup matches yours. So we're going to get into the idea of efficiency, quality, and complete protein, and all of these terms that we have been kind of brainwashed with. Okay? But that's why animal protein is called high quality protein. Because it's called high quality protein. Animals. Okay? Because it matches us the most. But something even better is you, right? we match each other more, but of course we wouldn't eat each other, right? Anyway, different topic. What I'm trying to say is if you classify protein by quality, and if quality is the best matching to mine, then yeah, meats are the best quality protein. But there's something that we don't take into consideration. So one of the things with plant-based protein is that they are less acidic than animal protein. One of the main causes for osteoporosis, is acidity. And acidity is caused by two things primarily: refined sugars and animal protein. So if you have a high refined carb diet and you're eating a lot of meat, you're setting yourself up for osteoporosis, right? Which is something natural that we're all going to have eventually anyway. But if we're a lot of sugar and a lot of meat, it speeds up, right? So we have 8 essential amino acids because our bodies cannot produce them. We have to get them from the outside. And from those 8, the body makes up another 11 or so, and then it makes up all the protein that we need. But here's the thing. Animal protein has all of them. So plants are considered low quality protein because it has all of the essentials, but animal protein is considered high quality protein because it has just simply all of them. But where did the elephant and the cow get their protein from?
Plants.
Grass, because it had all of the essential ones. Okay. So these contain the amount of amino acids that match our own bodies. You know, cheese and butter and meat and eggs and all of these things. They have the amino acids that match our own. And because of that, the body can use it efficiently. And because of the efficiency of animal protein, it is called high quality. And because of efficiency alone. Has it nothing to do with health? Has nothing to do with how it's used by the body. I mean, what it causes to the body. It's simply based on the amount of amino acids available and how quick our body can use them. This is how protein is labeled. And so it's misleading. Because high quality sounds good, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But it's simply labeled because of efficiency. And these are in the textbooks. The people who invented these terms and who invented and who found out protein and invented the labeling process in the USDA and the FDA, they tell us this. We're not making this up. This comes from the people themselves, okay? Efficiency equals to high quality. So a plant-based protein, and I was speaking to a doctor recently, he says that this statement isn't all 100% correct because it's not that it lacks 1 or 2 amino acids, but maybe the ratio is very low and it doesn't supply my need. But if you look in nature, the staple foods that you eat, if it's a potato, if it's any type of whole grain or a legume, lentils, it has all of the amino acids. It may not have the amount that you might need in one day. So it's good to eat, a potato with some lentils, and, you make a plate of food and then you have all of them. But all plant-based foods have protein, without exception. Everything has protein that you eat, except water. So keep that in mind. Everything has protein, okay? May not be like a load of it, but everything has protein. The concept of quality means the efficiency with which food proteins are used to promote growth. And this is the other factor. How did they figure this out? How did they go from saying efficient to high quality? It's because of a growth factor in studying farm animals, okay? So, this would be awesome if efficiency meant healthy. But efficiency and quality have nothing to do with health. It's based on studies on animals. So low quality plant-based protein that allows for a slower but non-acidic synthesis of new proteins, this is the healthiest type of protein. Okay? And the quality of protein is found out because they take a farm animal, let's say they take a pig, and they say, okay, we're going to feed the pig wheat. We're going to feed the pig soy. We're going to, they get 10 baby pigs and they feed them different types of protein. And the one that makes them grow faster, that is the one that's labeled high quality. And guess which protein makes pigs grow faster? Animal protein. Okay. That's why, vegetarians usually grow a little bit slower. My wife's sister, Sylvia, she's married to Luis Castro. I don't know if you know about him. He was the pastor that we were both fired at the same time in Austria. Okay, so Sylvia, my sister-in-law, right? So when they got married, I don't remember how old she was, but she hadn't finished growing because she grew up vegetarian, and he had stopped growing. Okay? And so when they got married, he was a little taller than her. Now she's a little taller than him because she hadn't stopped growing. Because vegetarians grow slower. You get what I'm saying? Sometimes to the age of 25, vegetarians can keep growing. It's a slowly but surely. Okay? But people who eat a lot of meat, they grow quick, they develop quick, and then they stop. Okay? They may be tall, but it's a quick growth. Okay? Because of the efficiency of the animal protein. It's efficient. It works fast, it works good, but it has nothing related to health. Nothing related to health. Okay? So, all plants have protein. All plant-based foods have protein. And so, from the amazing complex body that God has given to us, the body can take the essential 8 amino acids and give you everything you need. That's a proven scientific fact. The body can make up what it needs with these 8. What did the Lord say? Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. We ignore that word sometimes. Freely. In the books that I've been reading, I like how they come across. They don't promote counting calories. They don't promote special diets. They're like, get on a diet where you like the food, make it plant-based, and then eat as much as you want. You know why? Because the fiber and the water content in plant-based foods will make you fuller before it'll kill you. You get what I'm saying? If you eat the way we should eat, if I eat the way I should eat, and I'm getting a lot of fiber in my diet, and veggies and fruit, a lot of water, I'm going to feel full before I hit that overload of calories. You get what I'm saying? So of these ye may freely eat. So God knows that. He built the plant that way that we could hardly kill ourselves on food if we would eat it in a natural way, as more natural as possible. Right? But when we eat a refined food, we can eat a little handful and we've got 1,000 calories. And so it's hard because we can go over so quickly, it's difficult. And so even the processed, veggie meats, they're still processed. You still remove the fiber, you remove the carbs, you remove the natural fats, and you have a big heavy lump of protein. You season it up, tastes good, but it's processed. It's not the way God put it, Maybe a little healthier than the animal one, but long term it can affect your kidneys, different things can happen. So we have to be careful. The advice of the scientific community is, and we've been preaching this for a long time as Seventh-day Adventists, go back to a more plant-based whole food diet, right? And then you can fix those in a million different ways. It can be tasty. It's not saying it has to be tasteless and so forth. But keep the fiber, keep the water, keep it as whole as possible. It's the best, And so instead of buying meat patties, vegan meat patties, what we do, my wife, she gets onion and garlic and lentils and what's this thing, the cauliflower or broccoli, and just blend that all together and do that, and boom, nothing's really processed. The only thing is processed a little bit in the blender, but it's not refined. You get what I'm saying? And then you have all the fiber, you got a lot of the water still there, you got the fats to protein to carb ratio is intact. That's the best. Okay, so in the 1960s and 70s, there was a lot of talk about this big protein gap. There were certain countries in the world where they were having a lot of malnutrition. This is in the 1960s. And one of those countries was the Philippines. And the United States and the Philippines have very good relations. So the United States said, well, we got to help the people, right? We got to help these poorer countries. And so they sent out scientists to help the malnutrition problem in different parts of the world. T. Colin Campbell was caught up in this project and traveled to the Philippines to work on mothercraft workshops. And so what they would do is they would train the mothers how to prepare food from locally grown nuts or seeds or some type of protein that they could get easily, how to use it and how to feed it to their kids that they would actually eat it and reverse this malnutrition. This project was started by William Engel, Professor Engel, who was head of the Department of Biochemistry and Nutrition at Virginia Tech in 1967. So when they got to the Philippines, they said, okay, what do we have? What can we start training having these workshops with? And they found that peanuts were very plentiful and cheap. So best thing to use. But peanuts and corn, which were the two options in the Philippines, were contaminated with aflatoxin. Now, aflatoxin is a mold. It's a green mold. And aflatoxin is proven to be a carcinogen. It causes cancer, just like many other molds. And that's why in the Old Testament, there were very strict regulations against a moldy house. They called it leprosy of the house. And if after treating the house, it didn't go away, you had to burn the house down. That's how, God says, no mold. I don't want you guys living in mold. It's unhealthy. And so this green mold is aflatoxin. And they tested peanut butter in the Philippines, and they found out that even the bottled peanut butter was highly infected with aflatoxin, way more than in the U.S., because in the U.S. they actually control things. In the Philippines, who cares? So it was just a big mess. So how are they going to use something that's good, but it's contaminated? How are they going to give it to the kids? So they say, okay, we have to fix the aflatoxin problem so we can use this good, cheap product to feed the kids and go on with our project. And the peanuts, as they were on the farm, in the shell, they found that they weren't really contaminated. But when they were stored in maybe humid environments, piled up, ceiling high, waiting to be processed, that's where the mold would start. So if they could avoid getting the peanuts from storage facilities and get them elsewhere then. Anyway, the mold was the problem. Okay, so children were eating a lot of peanut butter, especially the richer kids. The poor kids weren't, because they're having a protein problem. They're going to use peanuts, but a lot of the richer families could afford it. They're going to take that same product and give it to the poorer families. But the kids from well-to-do families who are eating a lot of peanut butter, they were ingesting a lot of aflatoxin. And it was almost as a pandemic in these years that he was there in the Philippines. Loads and loads of more wealthy families, kids with liver cancer. It was rampant. And they figured out it's due to the aflatoxin in corn and peanuts. It's the staple. And so, big problem. How are we going to use peanuts now? We're going to give all the poor kids cancer. Became a problem. So this Dr. Caedo, he was the advisor to the President Marcos back then. And he worked with Colin and told him liver cancer is a big problem that we have, especially in the cities. Okay? And it's children that are well fed. Children that are well fed, wealthy families, they're the ones that are sick with cancer. And they found out that, the kids that were eating more protein had more liver cancer. So they thought that the protein was causing the cancer. It just so happened that a study from India surfaced that was done on rats. And it was an experiment where they would take 2 groups of rats, and they would they would inject them with aflatoxin, this mold. Okay? One group of mice was given aflatoxin, and then they were given a diet of 20% protein. Okay? So you take a plate, let's say you imagine your plate on a pie as a pie chart, 20% of it is protein. They gave the other group of rats, or mice, aflatoxin, and fed them only 5% protein. Aflatoxin, high doses of aflatoxin, the carcinogen. Every single rat fed, actually they had rats there, every single rat fed 20% protein got liver cancer. And none of the rats fed 5% protein got cancer. And so Colin sees this study coming from India because he's having the same problem. And now, how do you interpret this? Is it the aflatoxin causing cancer? Is it the protein causing cancer? What's happening? We're going to get back to that. We're all afraid of cancer. And chemical carcinogens is what usually gets blamed for causing cancer. In the 1980s, it was alar from apples, the cranberry scare of 1959, aminotriazole, DDTs, nitrites. This is what they put on your meat. So when you go to the farms, to the supermarkets, they look really red on the shelf. They wouldn't look like that if they didn't have nitrites. They'd look brown and dead. It's dead meat. But it looks bright and beautiful because of chemicals. And they know that these chemicals are carcinogens. Okay? Nitrosamine, so forth. Artificial sweeteners, dioxin, aflatoxin. These are chemical carcinogens. Or natural even, because aflatoxin is a mold, natural mold. Now, the nitrosamine that they gave rats to induce cancer, it would be as though you had to eat 270,000 hot dogs. So what they're saying is that the amount of chemicals, see, the way they find out that something is a carcinogen, a chemical is a carcinogen, is they give it to rats. But they give it at such high doses that it would be equivalent for humans to be eating doses that we will never ever get. So are the chemicals really causing cancer? This is the reasoning of Colin and other scientists around this time. So by 2030, they're thinking there's going to be about 3.1 million deaths due to cancer worldwide. Cancer has stages. It initiates, then the body promotes it, or it promotes itself, and then it progresses. We call that then metastasis. And carcinogens are usually byproducts of industrial processes. When you start your car and that carbon monoxide shoots out, that's a carcinogen. Okay? So we are constantly in contact with carcinogens. Carcinogens transform, mutate normal cells. And a mutation is a permanent change with damage to its DNA, and when the cell splits, this damage continues and spreads and gets bigger and you have tumors. Okay? So, they started to study aflatoxin. So if aflatoxin is a carcinogen, how does it work in the body? And why is it related to protein? And this is very interesting. So aflatoxin from this mold enters the cell. Aflatoxin is metabolized by an enzyme in the cell. It starts to be broken down. A dangerous byproduct is formed by this breaking down. And it's this byproduct that attacks the DNA. The DNA has a repair system, but it doesn't function so well. And if the cell multiplies before the DNA is repaired, you have a tumor starting. Okay? So, initial cancer cells do not grow unless right conditions are met. And cancer cells can remain dormant, waiting on factors or situations that will promote its growth. Promotion of cancer is reversible depending if we give it the right conditions. So, in diet, we call certain dietary habits promoters and anti-promoters. So drinking alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, these are promoters. And now they're finding out that certain foods are promoters of cancer. So, protein and initiation. Remember, the aflatoxin enters the cell, and then it is metabolized, okay, by an enzyme. It's broken down by an enzyme. The enzyme that does this is the mixed function oxidase in the cell. So the mixed function oxidase enzyme breaks down the aflatoxin, creates a byproduct which attacks the cell and causes cancer. That's the pathway of aflatoxin and its carcinogenity, okay? But enzyme activity, whether this mixed function oxidase detoxifies and breaks down the aflatoxin quickly or very slowly, depends on how much protein you eat. That's why the rats fed 20% protein with aflatoxin all got cancer. But the ones who were fed the same amount of aflatoxin with 5% protein, they never got cancer. Because the mixed function oxidase was never activated. It kind of stayed sleeping. Aflatoxin came in, it was eliminated somehow, another way, and this enzyme wasn't able to do what it did and create a byproduct that damaged the DNA. It's very interesting. So, when they decreased the protein from 20 to 5%, it didn't only greatly decrease the enzyme activity. The mixed function oxidase didn't just stay dormant. If you were eating a lot and then you went down to 5%, it got dormant very quickly and stopped causing the byproduct. This means that decrease in enzyme activity via a low-prone diet implied that less aflatoxin was being transformed into the dangerous aflatoxin metabolite that mutated the DNA. So, during promotion, this is when there's little tiny tumors starting already. Even at the promotion stage, so initiation of cancer, they're seeing, at least in the lab animals, it depends on how much protein you eat. Okay, let's take rats with stage 2 cancer that already have tumors forming. Okay, what if we give them protein? What if we take down protein? What if we play around with the percentages of protein? The exact thing happened. Even the tumors shrunk and disappeared or came back. So at the first and second stages of cancer, they had awesome results with playing around with protein percentages. All right, everyone following me so far? Following me? Everything clear? Okay, we're going to go through this a little quick because it can get a little bit too boring. But the point is, protein during the promotion trumps the carcinogen regardless of the initial exposure. Whether you give a lot of aflatoxin or a little aflatoxin or just a great huge overdose of alpha. They started pumping these rats with, they were having green blood, okay? Aflatoxin. They dropped the protein to 5%, no cancer. Nothing. And this was amazing. Okay? Very good. So they were seeing, they started to do a range of 4 to 24%. And they found that these tiny tumors, they're called foci, tiny tumor formations, did not develop with up to 10% dietary protein. Guess how much 10% dietary protein is in grams? About 50 grams. What was the needed amount of protein that we need?
48.
About 48, yeah. Okay, so let's keep that in mind, okay? Actually, it's a little bit less, I think. But anyway, 10% was the sweet spot. If they stayed below 10%, doesn't matter what kind of carcinogen they gave the rats, they never got cancer. After they passed 10%, things started to happen. These enzymes started to wake up and started to work in the cells. So, wait, I said 10%, right? Yeah, that's an upper limit. That's more than 50%, I'm sorry. But anyway, we'll get to those details. But the sweet spot for humans is actually less. I think it's 8%. Yeah, 10% is an upper limit, reaching, I think, more like 70 grams or something. Because you have to convert the percentage to grams based on the caloric need of the person. It changes per person, women, men, it changes a little bit. But anyway, with the aflatoxin was 10%. So 10% is what the daily allowance is. So that's still more than we need. And here we go. So yeah, I was about right. 50 grams, 10%. So the average American consumes 15 to 16 grams percent of protein in their diet. And I think today people eat even more. Because 70 grams, 100 grams is not much. It's not much protein. Not much animal protein, right? So does this place us at risk for getting cancer? The animal studies at least say that yes, it does. Okay. Of course, they haven't pumped humans with aflatoxin. That would be unethical. But they've done it on the animal studies. Okay. So, yeah. I was right. So 10% of dietary protein is about 50 to 60 grams a day, which is a little more than we need. Okay? Depending on your body weight, total calorie intake, activity levels, and all of that. But just look at some of these things here. One serving of whey protein that all these bodybuilders are eating, one serving is 19 grams of protein. And that's 100 calories. It's not much. It's not much. 3 ounces of fish is 25 grams of protein. So 3.5 times 2. In theory, 7 grams of protein, 7 ounces of protein would be 50 grams. 7 ounces of fish would be 50 grams of protein, which would be your limit. People eat a lot more than that nowadays, right? 4 eggs is 24 grams of protein. In theory, 8 eggs would give you all the protein you need a day. Not saying to eat eggs. I'm just saying that's the amount of protein in these things. Let's compare it to plant-based foods. Okay? You have some with a lot of protein and you have some with less protein. Remember, all plant-based foods have protein. Sunflower seeds are very high on the list. Quinoa, okay? They have cheese here. It's not all not plant-based, but most of the things are plant-based. Lentils, and this is 100 grams, okay? 100 grams of lentils is 9 gram protein. 10% of 100, it's about 10. So lentils have a lot of protein, okay? And if you're eating 3 meals a day and you're eating a couple of things on your plate, you're getting enough protein. You don't even have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it, right? It's just available, in the things that we eat. Unless we're eating very refined carbs and we're just eating a lot of starches and we're getting no protein, then it's a problem. You get malnutrition. But here in the West, that's not a problem. Our problem is too much. Okay? So let's go on here. In the animals fed 20% levels of protein, these tiny tumors called foci increase in number and size as the aflatoxin dose was increased. So what they found out, they could switch cancer on and off depending on how much protein they were giving the animals. Let's go on. Now this is the big question. We've talked about giving the rats protein, but we haven't mentioned what they were feeding them. Did it matter what kind of protein they gave the animal?
I would think so.
Guess what these rats were eating exclusively that reacted so much with the aflatoxin to give them cancer? Milk.
Milk?
Just milk.
Cow's milk.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cow's milk is animal protein. And it reacts with the body in a very similar way, I think, and scientists think, as in with the animal, in the lab animals. And so what they did, they said, okay, we're going to give these rats high doses of plant-based protein. And let's see what's going to happen. You know what happened? Nothing. No cancer, no reaction. The mixed function oxidase stayed dormant even when they gave high doses of soy, gluten, different types of plant-based. So this is only relevant with animal-based protein and how it reacts in the body to produce cancer with aflatoxin. This is amazing research, but you're not going to see it on the news. And this is done by very, very highly qualified Cornell University professors. Right? That's T. Colin Campbell. They put together an online program for 6 weeks. I did it because I was like, this is awesome. And they go through all of it and all the scientists, and it's a good resource. And I did the course online because it was amazing. And what they do, they promote basically a plant-based whole food diet, fully vegan. But they don't use the word vegan anymore because Coca-Cola and Oreos is vegan. Yeah, Oreos don't have any milk, but it's not healthy. So we have to use. I like to use this now, whole food, plant-based. Let's go back as much as we can to nature. That's just this general principle, right? Less refined. So what they did now, they flipped the food pyramid upside down. We have less refined foods, but they didn't take this research into consideration. So you have a lot of the, high protein diet. So it's not really better. The new food pyramid is a disaster, in my opinion. Ellen White says, let the people be taught how to prepare food without the use of milk or butter. Tell them that the time will come when there will be no more safety in using eggs, milk, cream, or butter, because disease in animals is increasing in proportion to the wickedness among men. Are they prohibited in the Bible? No. But our world is sick. Our world is sick, And so she says the time will come. 200 years later, 100 years later, a little bit more than 100. Maybe I think the time is now. Definitely, we see all kinds of things happening in the animal world and how they process it, the condition of the animals, the amount of antibiotics they have to give them. It's proof that our animals are sick. Cancers, tumors, and all inflammatory diseases are largely caused by meat eating. Very clear testimony. Scientists laughed at her back then. Now we have very specific scientific evidence to support this. Down to the nitty-gritty, how it works in the cell, microscopic analysis. We have evidence now. We don't need faith anymore. It's science. So, plant protein did not promote cancer, even at high levels of intake. It'll kill your kidneys. You get kidney stones if you eat too much plant-based protein. Because you eat a load of protein, you're going to hurt your kidneys. Doesn't matter which type of protein it is. The animal's worse because of the acid. Leaches calcium, grease in the kidneys. Perfect storm for a kidney stone, right? But my dad, if he noticed if he ate a lot of beans or he ate too much protein, he'd feel a heaviness down here. And it's hard. The body's got to process all of that. But according to the lab studies, it doesn't promote cancer. It's very interesting. I'm talking about plant-based protein. David Schlesinger did a study on wheat protein, and he gave the rats wheat protein, and 20% at 20% levels of their diet, a load of aflatoxin, nothing happened. But switched to milk, tumors started right away. Very interesting. They're linking milk to prostate cancer. Very high correlation between milk and prostate cancer nowadays. So, you have to be careful. All right, so I'm going to skip down a little bit. We have certain viruses too that can cause cancer, particularly liver cancer. One of those is the hepatitis B virus. It is shown that, proven that hepatitis B causes a mutation and causes liver cancer. So we have viruses that are carcinogens as well. Like the human papillomavirus is a carcinogen for the women's reproductive system. Hepatitis B virus is a carcinogen for the human liver. Guess what? Milk protein allowed the virus to mutate the cell faster. But you stop milk protein, the virus stays dormant and doesn't cause damage. But only with animal protein. So you take a chemical carcinogen, or you take a mold, or you take a virus, and animal protein acts in the very same way. It's a clutch, first gear or fifth gear. Amazing, amazing research, right? And so, let's say someone eats animal protein. In theory, if they would keep it at a very low dose, no problem. But, in terms of cancer, still acidic, still going to leach calcium from your bones, but we're talking about cancer, right? So, my grandparents, they were poor, living on a farm, no industrialization. They ate a chicken when they could afford to, because if they ate a chicken every day, they'd have no chickens in a couple of weeks, right? Ate it when they could. My great-grandma lived almost to be 100. But nowadays, it's, you have Bojangles on the island. Some people, they eat their 3 meals in Bojangles. That's way too much protein. And, risk for cancer. Everyone has cancer. All right. So there's a lot of things we can go in here. It's 2:20. This goes on. There's some more interesting stuff. How much longer should I go?
Keep going.
A little bit?
Yeah.
As long as you can take it.
All right. So the China study was a result of actually a command given by the Premier of China, Zhou Enlai, in 1970s. He was dying of cancer. And so he initiated a nationwide survey to benefit the people of China after he had passed away on cancer and health. And so it's the largest study that is done on relationship between disease and nutrition ever done in the history of mankind. Because this guy, he was dying, and he says, I want to give something to my people before I go. So he said, every scientist, every doctor, every nurse, we're going to have a big study. All of China is going to be our lab. And what I'm going to give you now are the results of this study. So it was a survey of death rates for 12 kinds of cancer for more than 2,400 Chinese counties, covering about 880 million people. So it's a very reliable statistical tool that we can use in the area of nutrition. And one of the positive things is that 87% of the Chinese people are genetically similar. So the results are not going to vary because of genes. Okay. So what they found is that in China there was a great difference between people with cancer and people who didn't have cancer. Even though they're the same ethnic group, you have areas with very, very high cancer rates and areas with no cancer at all. It's the same people. Okay, what was different? Okay. So they started to study mortality rates from a range of different diseases. Okay, this is like a subsequent study to the great China study that was done. And when they got through, they went to 65 counties and did blood tests on many different people. And they had at the end 8,000 statistically significant associations between lifestyle, diet, and disease variables. So we have to interpret these in the right way, because some of these things, if we don't, it can be misleading. And this is the reason why a lot of people take, for example, supplements today, and I'm going to explain. All right. So were the findings that they were finding in the lab in the same time period going to be consistent with the human experience in China from these two studies? Now, a Chinese eats a diet high in plant foods. Okay? And in America, 15 to 16% of total calories come from protein, and 80% of the protein is animal-based. But in China, they only eat 9 to 10% of their total calories from protein, and only 10%, not 80%, but only 10% of those total calories come from animal-based foods. So the West, compared to the Chinese diet, very different. And so the calories intake in China were 2,641 per day average. And the United States, only about 2,000. So the Chinese ate a lot more calories, but they didn't gain weight as the Western people, or in the United States, even though they ate less calories, which was also very interesting to them. They ate a lot less fat, a lot more fiber, less protein, much less animal protein, and a lot more iron. In other words, in the United States, on an animal diet, people get less iron than people who actually eat plant-based iron, because the body just uses it nicely and easily. For example, you have lots of food with iron. Potatoes have iron. Okay, broccoli has iron. Beets have iron. Most legumes have iron. And you want your body to absorb it very easily. You just squeeze a little bit of lemon on it. The vitamin C, the acid, helps the body to absorb more of the iron. So in rural China, they're eating a lot of citrus fruits, and they're eating different plant-based foods, and they're getting their iron, they're getting their citrus, and they have higher levels in iron than even people who are just eating meat. So that's a misconception, that you need, to get iron, you need to eat meat. It's not true.
Wow.
I've never supplemented iron. My parents probably gave us a little bit when we were young, because it was kind of trendy. But my blood's always a little bit too high. and Yuchi pines, it bleed people when their iron was too high, because it can give you high blood pressure. But the plants give you iron. That's the point. Okay. So the Chinese study by this team compared diets rich in plant-based foods to diets very rich in plant-based foods. Okay. So you get what I'm saying? If you have Westerners who eat a lot of meat but then eat a lot of veggies also, that's a diet high in plant-based foods. But the Chinese, they eat a diet very, very high in plant-based foods because they have less animal protein in their diet. So they're comparing the two. In almost all other Western studies, scientists compare diets rich in animal-based foods to diets very rich in animal-based foods. So what did they find out? In the places where people were richer, more wealthy, and could eat animal-based protein, there was more cancer, colon, lung, breast, leukemia. This is in rural China. Childhood brain cancer, stomach cancer, liver cancer, diabetes, coronary heart disease. These are the killers today, right? But in the poor areas, they didn't have cancer. They had pneumonia. They had parasites, so much that they couldn't even, defecate because they were so full of parasites. They had peptic ulcers, maybe from H. pylori. They had rheumatic heart disease because of fevers and infections. They had anything else but the lifestyle diseases that the Westerners have, even in China. If they ate more meat, they had more cancer. If they didn't eat too much meat, less cancer. So they started to see this correlation. All right. So the strongest predictors of Western diseases was blood cholesterol. Now you'll say, well, where does this come from? We're comparing animal foods. Okay. So remember, they're taking only blood samples, and they're answering a questionnaire. So the people are saying how much meat they eat, how much they just have information. But what they have that's very valuable is their blood. And they're checking their blood. And the people that are sicker, cholesterol is low. The people that are healthier, cholesterol is low. People that are sicker, cholesterol is high. So a correlation can be misleading in this way. Oh, high cholesterol causes cancer, diabetes. No. It's showing you something. It doesn't mean it's causing it. Okay? So, where do you get cholesterol from? Only animals. There's no cholesterol in animal and plant-based foods. Zero. Okay? And so, the high cholesterol was reflective of how much animal protein the person was eating. Okay? And so, one thing that's interesting too is for a human, even if you cut out your cholesterol, but you eat animal protein, the protein itself stimulates your body to produce more cholesterol. Because we produce our own cholesterol. Okay? So animal protein alone, and I learned this at UC Pines, it will raise your cholesterol. You know? And so even if you're not having a whole big plate of meat, I have an aunt, about a year ago, she's complaining, my cholesterol is high, my triglycerides are high, and I don't eat meat, I don't do this. I was like, how do those chocolates come in? She's like, yeah, I gotta eat 3 or 4 of them a day. Animal-based protein in the chocolate, because there's a lot of milk and butter and whatever, and a lot of sugar. Her triglycerides and her cholesterol was rising simply because she was eating a lot of animal-based protein simply by a chocolate. But she was eating a lot of it. No? Of course, you got to eat enough so that things start to happen. In her case, it went up. But she wasn't eating big plates of meat. Just chocolate. But chocolate has lots of animal protein and lots of sugar and lots of fat. And that's a perfect storm for your body to produce more cholesterol, even though it may not have cholesterol in it. All right, so dietary cholesterol is the cholesterol in the food we eat. This is found only in animal-based foods. And exactly how much you eat, you can't really test. Blood cholesterol is made in the liver. So if you eat something that doesn't have a liver, you won't get blood cholesterol. You won't get cholesterol from that source. Okay? So, same thing with fat. Dietary fats and cholesterol don't necessarily turn into body fat and blood cholesterol. As blood cholesterol in rural China rose in certain counties, the incidence of Western diseases, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, increased. So, the average blood cholesterol in Chinese levels was 127. The American average is 215. And some people in China had it below 100. So what do they say is a normal cholesterol? What do the doctors tell us? Keep it below 200. That's okay, but that's not ideal. You need to keep it. If you're really strictly on a plant-based diet and you're not eating animal protein, your cholesterol will just drop down to where your body, keeps it, because your body will control that. But if you're eating it, then it's going to rise. If you keep it below 200, apparently it's very safe in terms of heart conditions. One of the main heart specialists here in the country is, what's his name? Esselstyn. What's his first name? Esselstyn Jr. Anyway, I think I have it here at the end. But anyway, he says he's never seen a heart patient or a heart attack with cholesterol below 200. So, it's a good thing to tell people keep it below 200. But a lot of people are eating a lot of foods with cholesterol, but taking the pill to keep it below 200. You're still getting a lot, it still can accumulate in places where we don't want. So we have to be careful, because blood cholesterol can cause plaque. And blood cholesterol rises not just because you eat cholesterol. But even if you eat some animal protein, it'll stimulate your body to produce more cholesterol. Okay? Very good. All right, so high cholesterol is associated then with many other diseases simply because it comes from a source that's not plant-based. This is his name. Yeah, Caldwell. Dr. Caldwell. Yeah. All right. So, I'm sorry, I said 200. 150, sorry. Right? They've never seen a heart disease fatality among patients who had blood cholesterol lower than 150. So 150 is the level, where below that, they've never seen a heart attack with below 150. And so that gives us an idea. After 150, you have angina, you have some heart things that, if it goes higher, then you risk for heart attack and so forth. Below 150, never. So that's a good number to keep in mind. All right. Saturated fat and dietary cholesterol also raise blood cholesterol. So not only animal protein raises blood cholesterol, saturated fat also raises blood cholesterol. Where do we get saturated fat? Prime source, animal protein. Animal meats. Meats, yeah. And the Bible tells us that we should not eat the blood or the fat. It's prohibited in the Bible to eat animal fat. And, and blood. So, how many of Seventh-day Adventists who eat meat? I tell this in my church because I know a lot of my members eat meat. Or a lot of the people who come to visit us, not really, some of them aren't really members, they're just, and some are members that eat meat. I tell them, are you eating meat the way God tells you to eat meat? If you go to Bojangles, it's going to have fat on it. It's a sin. It's against God's directive. The Bible says, if you're going to eat meat, it should not have fat and it shouldn't have blood. So find the Jew or learn how to do it, but prepare your meat. If you're going to eat it, you got to prepare it, because if you're eating it with the fat, the Bible condemns it, one, and number two, it's saturated. All animal fat is saturated, without exception. Okay? It's going to raise your blood cholesterol. It can cause heart disease. It can cause diabetes. The list goes on. So we see that we're allowed in the Bible to eat certain things, but God says you're going to do it this way for your health. He loves us. He wants us to be happy. He wants us to be healthy. He knows what's going. He created us. He created the animals. He knows how it's going to function in the body. All right. So on average, in the West, 34 to 40% of our total calories comes from fat. So the average American eats about 15% calories from protein, 40% calories from fat. Or let's round it off at 35. So you have 35 plus 15. Someone help me? 35 plus 15 is 50, right? And then you have 50 left for the carbohydrates. That's not a healthy ratio. A healthy ratio would be about 8% protein, 10% fat, and 85% carbs, but complex carbs. And this is exactly what doctors are telling the people not to do today. Eat more protein, eat more fat, drop the carbs because of diabetes. Perhaps we can have a Zoom meeting and I can do my diabetes seminar, which I like even more than this one because of the amazing research that's coming out on the relationship with fat and animal fat and different things to diabetes. So there's a study of Ken Carroll in the University of Western Ontario. He showed a relationship between dietary fat and breast cancer. And he showed that breast cancer was associated with animal fat, but not with plant fat. So it's much different the way the body uses these types of fat. All right, so here we have the Leviticus 3:17 is the verse. It shall be a perpetual statute for your generations throughout all your dwellings, that ye eat neither fat nor blood. Right? And I tell my members and my friends, if you go to Bojangles, if you go to Papa John's, if you go to wherever, I'm 100% sure they didn't take out these two in the meat that you're eating, right? They just don't do it. They don't do it. So We have to align ourselves with what the Bible says so that we can please God. So in China and in international studies, fat consumption was only an indication of animal-based food consumptions. Okay? So the association between fat and breast cancer might really be telling us that a consumption of animal-based food, as the consumption of animal-based foods goes up, so does breast cancer. But this is not the case in the US. Why? Because in China and in international places, the fat content that you eat is attached to the product which it comes in. So if you're getting a lot of animal fat, you eat a lot of chicken or you eat a lot of beef, where you got the fat from. But in highly developed countries like in Europe and the United States, it's different. Because we take fat from those places and we put them on our French fries. We take fat from the bad source, or we hydrogenate it, or we make it into trans fat, and we put it on our veggies. You get what I'm saying? So you can eat a lot of veggies, but if it's filled with the animal fat or the trans hydrogenated vegetable fats, you're still eating bad fats. You didn't eat the avocado. You put a little avocado in your salad, but then you put the trans fat dressing on top.
From animal.
Well, in trans fat usually comes from some small percentage of animal saturated fat is trans fat, but trans fat is primarily a man-made fat, where they take, oils and they make them very nice and smooth, so that the peanut butter runs really nice and smooth on your bread. And
Peanut butter is the best example of hydrogenated oil.
yeah, fully hydrogenated. It says sometimes, I'm like, worst thing you can eat. We buy the peanut. Just the ingredients is peanuts, ground peanuts, because peanut butter with the fully hydrogenated vegetable oil, it has 0 grams trans fat. But here's the thing: here in the U.S., they can put 0 when it's actually 0.4. So you eat 3 or 4 servings, you have already got a gram or 2 of trans fat. So you have to be very careful, because the guidelines allow them to write something that's not real in many cases. And the food labeling, there's a million laws there at the FDA and stuff. But fiber is important. Corn, wheat and corn, high in iron. Who thinks? It's there. How many corn do you have to eat to get a teaspoon of corn oil? It's about a bucket. Who's going to eat a bucket of corn? Right? But couple spoons of corn oil, easy if you're going to add it into your food. So this is the disparity. Right? You have in international studies, poor areas in China, you have people that have high fat. It's because they got it somewhere. But in the Western world, we add fat to our diet. And it's way too much than what the body needs. We would never get it in a natural scenario, because we would have to eat so much olives to get the amount of olive oil that we eat that you'd die from olive sickness. You get what I'm saying? More plant-based whole food, we get these macronutrients in their proportions that are healthy. But when we refine things and we add them at pleasure, we throw things out of whack. Okay? Another thing they found was antioxidants were very important. Okay? All of these colors and the different fruits, they represent the antioxidants. Carotenoids, beta-carotene, lycopene, ascorbic acid, vitamin E, all of these things help to undo the damage done by free radicals. So when levels of vitamin C in the blood were low, people were more likely to have cancer. So one of the correlations, one of those 8,000 correlations, was the following. People that have high vitamin C levels, less cancer. People that have more vitamin C levels in their blood, less cancer. More vitamin C, less cancer. Less vitamin C, more cancer. Oh, more vitamin C will protect me from cancer. So we supplement vitamin C. It doesn't work like that. This is a correlation, it's not a cause. So what this was telling them was, those people who have less cancer eat more fruit. But we've turned it around in the West, and we look at these studies, and the advertising agencies look at these studies and say, we're going to sell vitamin C, and we're going to make millions because of the correlation. But it's not a cause. It's just a correlation. It's just telling you eat more fruit and less processed things, or less meats and so forth. You get what I'm saying? It makes sense, yeah? So a lot of the the industry with supplements come from a wrong interpretation of correlations. Whereas if we would actually eat the vitamin C in its natural state, we have the bioflavonoids, we have all the enzymatic functions along with it, packaged perfectly as God made it with the vitamin C, that when we eat it like that, it's just, the body loves it. But we eat a lot of ascorbic acid, vitamin C, and we get a diarrhea. Try to get a diarrhea by eating some oranges. You're going to have to eat a lot of oranges. You know what I mean? We can overdo it. I'm not saying don't drink vitamin C. I'm just saying if you can get it in the natural product, the way God packaged it, much, much better. So they saw these correlations. Can we say that vitamin C, beta-carotene, and dietary fiber are solely responsible for preventing cancers? In other words, can a pill containing these create these health effects? No. If you take vitamin C supplements, but you're eating a lot of animal-based foods or a lot of saturated fat, the vitamin C is not going to help your heart. You get what I'm saying, right? Or not going to stop you from getting cancer. The supplement, I mean. The triumph of health lies not in the individual nutrient, but in the whole foods that contain those nutrients. Plant-based foods. In a bowl of spinach, you have fiber, antioxidants, and countless other nutrients that are orchestrating a wondrous symphony of health as they work in concert within our bodies. Science is showing that the healthiest diet to eat is a high-carb diet, but with more of the complex carbs. At least 99% of the carbohydrates that we consume are derived from fruits, vegetables, and grains. When we eat these in their more natural state, the complex form, it is the healthiest. I hear a lot of people saying, okay, well, they spray pesticides on the fruits and veggies, so I'll just eat whatever, because you're going to get cancer anyhow. Well, remember what we saw. They gave those rats high doses of these carcinogens. But what really made the difference was the amount of protein. So don't be worried about, let's wash your vegetables, wash your fruit. But don't blame that for cancer when you're eating a load of meat. I'm not saying you guys do it. I'm talking the way I speak in big, congregations, people from, all walks of life and not even Adventists and so forth. But, we can still learn and be able to share this with others. All right. Very good. Grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables constitute the diet chosen for us by our Creator. These foods, prepared in as simple and natural a manner as possible, are the most healthful and nourishing. On the other end of the spectrum are highly processed simple carbohydrates, which are not healthy. White bread, crackers, chips, pastries, candies, sugar-laden drinks, all examples. Okay? So this is a high-carb food, but it's not the healthiest way to go. An apple or a zucchini or a plate of rice with beans and veggies, that's a complex carb diet. Right? And it has all the protein you need, all the fats that you need. All right? And here's the thing. If you put a little bit of just 50 calories a day, every day, 50 calories that you don't burn, that's about 10 pounds a year. Because after every 3,500 calories that you store, the body turns that into fat. So that's the thing now, calories can be turned into fat. And the body can take fat and break it back down. So, even on a healthy diet, you can be on a vegan diet. But if you're getting a lot of your calories from oils and from sugars and so forth, you'll find that you can gain weight, right? Because you're getting a lot of calories, the body then turns it into energy, into fat, stored energy. All right. So, T. Colin Campbell gives a little testimony at the end of his book. He says, from a boyhood of drinking at least 2 quarts of milk a day to an early professional career of scoffing at vegetarians, I have taken an unusual turn in my life. Right? So, these people who are really, he may be a Christian, he's not Seventh-day Adventist. They're being our examples. Because they're studying it out and trying to eat accordingly, and they're reaping the benefits. They're very elderly and still healthy. Oh, that's it. Okay, I thought it was a little bit more, but that's it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I hope that we've learned something that will motivate us to eat a little bit healthier. And even if we're eating healthy, maybe have a better perspective on these correlation things, supplements, where to get our nutrients from. Let's go whole food, plant-based is the best option. And don't worry about protein. Everything you eat from the plant world has protein in it.
What God showed Ellen White back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, is totally being backed by science today.
Yeah.
I went to the True North with health plant-based doctors, and went up through a fast and then a plant-based food and stuff. It was great, and I learned a lot. And
Yeah.
when I was in the hospital with this stupid broken hip, the doctors could not believe my vitals because they were so good. They said, "You don't take drugs for high blood pressure or any of that." I said, "No, I don't take any drugs." And they couldn't believe it. My blood pressure was low. Everything was, really good.
Yeah.
Except my hip.
Yes. Yes, sir.
I forget that there was a slide in there about hepatitis.
The hepatitis B virus, it's carcinogen. It can cause liver cancer.
Okay.
Can cause it. If it just, you don't treat it, it doesn't.
Okay, yeah, because I had a family member that had Hep C.
Okay.
So yeah, I was just wondering about that. And then also, Brother Perry, do you publish your messages online anywhere?
This one will be, hopefully. I don't have this online. In Belize, they filmed one. I don't remember if it was a diabetes one or this one, but it's not good quality. It's just cell phone. I don't even know if it's online yet. I haven't done it personally. This is quite new, these presentations that I've made. My diabetes presentation is from the book Mastering Diabetes by Cyrus.
I hope.
I'll tell you afterwards. Cyrus Kambata, and they have a YouTube channel, Mastering Diabetes. Very good information. But anyway, I get my information from some of these, newer research. And when I see that it makes sense, it follows our message, then I make presentations while I read. And so it helps me to prepare. But like I said, this is kind of fresh and new. I haven't really filmed yet. But these are things that are, just a few days ago, someone donated something, a camera that I could film with. So we're getting there.
Yeah, as soon as you start publishing, let us know where we can find them so we can share them with other people.
Okay, very good. I really want to do like 5-minute health nuggets. Someone has asked me to do it every Sunday. I told them I'm very busy, but I'll try. But if I can get into it and it becomes a routine, then I'll soon have a good. Yeah. What I do is I have my resources, good videos, and those are the ones I send. Because I'm like it's already there, and I couldn't say it better. So just watch this.
You're a good speaker. You present them
Yeah.
in an exciting way.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the motivation. I think I'll start doing it. Yeah.
So is peanut butter, if it's fresh ground from organic peanuts, is that okay?
Yeah.
Peanut butter from that, but not with all the added stuff.
Right.
The jars.
Right, yeah.
Karen, the best way to tell is
If
the
it's-
natural kind will have the oil on top in the jar and will be separated.
Yeah.
The hydrogenated peanut butter is the kind that doesn't have the oil on top and it's all naturally smooth.
That's my job at home.
It's peanut butter.
At least twice a month.
You stir it up.
My husband, takes about a half hour, but then it gets pretty
I don't
smooth.
want that oil. I'll pick it up top, I just throw it out, because that's just fat.
Yeah, it's natural, but at Uchi Pines, Dr. Agatha gave us a story. They had just come to Uchi or something. There was a lot of peanuts, and they were trying to make use of what they had, or had just purchased. I don't remember. It was like early on in the Uchi Pine days, and her and the team, they were just eating a lot of peanuts, too much peanuts. You should eat about a handful of nuts a day is fine, but if you're eating 4 or 5, 6 handfuls of nuts, then you got to get a lot of oil. And so they're eating a lot of peanuts, and they took the blood work of some of the patients that they had. And in that batch, they all wanted to get their blood work done. And so they had all taken the blood work along with the patient, and they sent it into the lab. And when it came back, there was a few of them had a very thick fat content in the centrifuged vial of blood.
From what?
And Dr. Agatha gets all of the samples, and the first glance, she says, she looks and she's like, "Ooh, we got some problems here. Some of these patients going to have some heart issues. Their cholesterol and fat is high. I can just see by looking at the vial." And they didn't have their names on it. They were numbered and coded, the numbers with the name. And so when she took them out, she realized that was hers. That was her blood.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
And she wasn't plant-based.
yeah,
Oh, she was?
yeah. She was eating peanuts.
She was what?
Eating peanuts. Too many peanuts.
Too many peanuts.
Her fat and her blood was high. But of course, if you stop in a couple of days, it's back to normal.
Goes back,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Interesting.
the plant-based foods have the fats, they have the proteins, they have everything. Yeah. But temperance, we can overdo it in everything. We can drink too much water and flush out our sodium and feel that you're going to die. I've done it by accident once. Someone was telling me, if you drink enough water, you feel that you're getting a flu, you drink enough water, it's going to kick it out of you. I was like, okay. Next time I got a flu, I drank a lot of water. Almost died. Had to run up to the cafeteria and get some salt. Drink something salty, because, extremes.
We know about extremes.
I have to watch that too, yeah. Any other questions? Thank you again. So always a blessing to be with you guys. And if Lord willing, we'll see each other again. If not, in heaven. Thank you.